It's nicely configured, but you can't get any cheaper. So if this is beyond your price range, well, your decision's already made. Next is portability. Now, granted, these are both very compact machines. The Dell is the smaller one, but the size difference isn't as big as versus some other 13-inch laptops that the Dell has faced. However, it does weigh a whole lot less, 2.6 to 2.8 pounds versus 3.5 pounds. So portability points. Mac fights back, having more ports and having a webcam in a normal location for those who matter. I don't know how important that is to many of you, but what is important, more horsepower here. For those of you who need to do more heavy computing tasks, you're planning on getting one of these to be your main machine. You don't want to think, especially down the road a couple of years, like, wow, this thing is just too slow for me. You're doing Photoshop and 1080p video editing right now, you're compiling code, you're doing big Excel spreadsheet computers, things like that. This guy is going to win. And for gaming as well, even though neither of these is really a gaming laptop, they're both in the Ultrabook class. The Iris 6100 graphics and the more powerful CPU in here mean more frames in your game. So playing something like Diablo 3, for example, see about 8 frames better on the Mac. Now, the game selection on the Mac isn't so bad, but for those of you who are going to put Windows on here, say Boot Camp or something to play your games, then you'll notice the difference. So there you have it, the 13-inch MacBook Pro with Retina display, the early 2015 model Broadwell Inside, and Broadwell Inside, our latest generation 2015 Dell XPS 13, one of the hottest Windows Ultrabooks on the market. Same price, metal exterior, backlit keyboards, a lot going for both of these very high resolution displays. And as you can see, either way, you're not going to go wrong. You're spending about the same amount of money. In terms of horsepower, obviously the Mac is going to win. It has the faster 28 watt CPU. In terms of battery life, it depends, as we said, touch or non-touch on the Dell. In the end, it also comes down to what operating system you want to run. If you want to go with Mac OS X, which is a lovely operating system, by all means go with the Mac. But if you want to put Windows on the Mac, you know what I say. You're losing the drivers and all that kind of thing. So, both superb machines. Either way, you got a winner. I'm Lisa from Mobile Tech Review. Be sure to visit mobiletechreview.com for our written reviews with benchmarks and more, and hit that like button. This is Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and it's SmackDown time yet again. This is probably one of the most obvious SmackDowns, or one of the most necessary. Here we have the new Dell XPS 13, the 2015 edition, the one that is incredibly small, incredibly light, running on Intel Broadwell generation CPUs. Here we have the incumbent, the Lenovo Yoga 3 Pro, been out since November of 2014, one of the first Broadwell systems, albeit a different kind of processor inside. Both are 13.3 inches, under 3 pounds. A lot of similarities, but some important differences. We're going to compare them now. Here we have the battle for your dollars, $1,299 to be specific. Right here we have the Lenovo Yoga 3 Pro. Lenovo just rolls one configuration, and that's a nicely equipped device, and it has 8 gigs of RAM and a 256 gig SSD, a QHD Plus 3200 by 1800 display. Here we have perhaps the most desirable, depends on your tastes and your needs, version of the 2015 Dell XPS 13, the new kid on the block as of late January, early February 2015. That one also has 8 gigs of RAM and a 256 gig SSD, and the same resolution, 3200 by 1800 display. Sharp IGZO display here, and this is a Samsung PLS second generation display here that doesn't have the dingy yellow problems that the Yoga 2 Pro first generation Samsung display had. Both of these are glossy touchscreens. To add another wrinkle to the equation, there is also a matte 1080p version of the Dell XPS, and that one's considerably cheaper. It starts at $799 for a Core i3, $899 for a Core i5. And so you can see it. Well, here it is. We'll just put it in front of its shiny touchscreen brother right there. Really, you're looking at pretty much equal color gamut on all 3 displays. Different color rendition, I'll give you that, but this one being matte, it has a lot less glare. It's a little bit if you move it around, but that's the nice part. And there's cost saving here. And that's for those of you who don't like touchscreens, because this one is non-touch, this 1080p version, that's less money. But to keep comparisons fair, we're going to focus on the QHD Plus touchscreen model because that's the only way you can get the Yoga 3 Pro. We do say thank you, Dell, for giving us choices there, though. First thing, the display, both of these obviously running the same picture. They're both running at their native resolution with 200% scaling, which is a very usable look. As you can see, you can still see the icons on the desktop and the taskbar and all that sort of thing. The colors, though, both of these have near identical sRGB and Adobe RGB color gamut, which is in the upper 70s for Adobe RGB, upper 90s for sRGB. You can see they handle color a little bit differently. The Yoga panel is actually, it emphasizes the reds. It's, in terms of color calibration, it's pretty far off, but it's off in a way that's very pretty. For those of you who are graphics pros and you need to calibrate, you can always do that to bring things under control a little bit, but it does give you a bit more vividness on the reds. The Sharp IGZO panel tends towards the coolness end of the spectrum here. I think there's a little bit more sharpness and detail here, and this is a 3800 by 1800 image here on both of these, so you're looking at something that is suitable for the displays. A little bit more detail and contrast maybe in these colors. Now Lenovo has 304 nits of brightness as we measure it. The Sharp IGZO panel is supposed to have 400 nits. It's harder to actually measure with a colorimeter, which is a piece of hardware, because it has adaptive brightness, and that's something that's built into the firmware or the BIOS. I don't mean the stuff that you can set in your power management, so it will adapt to the environment. If you're in a bright place, it's going to get a lot brighter, but if you're in a really dark room, you really can't crank it up to 400 nits. If that bothers you, then Lenovo is the machine for you. It's not something you can see. It's not going to flicker or wildly vary. It's just a very subtle, gradual adjustment to your room's environment. Anyway, in terms of display, either way, they're both very beautiful. The IGZO display uses a lot less power, so that's why Dell manages to get some very good battery life, and obviously with that firmware power management for the display going on. Next, most important thing, notice the position these two guys are in. Do you want a convertible? If you want a convertible with the Yoga 360-degree hinge, if you want to use it like a tablet or in presentation mode, which it's in right now, obviously the Yoga 3 Pro is for you no matter what the Dell brings to the table. The Dell is just a standard laptop. It doesn't do anything tricky. It goes this far back. That's as far back as it goes. And that's it. The Yoga, as you probably know by now, and you can watch our video review rather and read our written review. It goes into all of these positions. It's also incredibly thin. It's pretty light. Both of these with the touchscreen weigh 2.8 pounds. The non-touch Dell is 2.6 pounds. Still pretty close. So, do you want the versatility of this design? Do you have a use for it? Or are you just going to really use it as a laptop most of the time anyway and say, geez, it's really kind of like too heavy to use a 2.8 pound tablet? But you can. There it is as a tablet. Next most important thing is portability requirements. Now, both of these may weigh just about the same and be some of the lightest laptops or Ultrabooks on the market with 13.3-inch displays. And yes, the Dell's display is the same size. It just doesn't look it because it has these incredibly small bezels, 5.2 millimeter bezels versus the more traditional size bezel on the Lenovo. But anyway, same screen size, same resolution on both of these. But the next most important thing, portability. The Dell XPS 13 2015 edition is unusual because it is a 13.3-inch laptop that's about the size of an 11.6-inch model. So for those of you who care about such things and you want your bag to not be filled as much as possible, really you professional road warriors are always on the go. Look at that. Put them together like that, and you can see the difference in size right there. It's as if you're changing to a different size class machine, but again, you're getting a 13.3-inch. So points there for Dell for that. Now, in terms of side thickness, these are both very thin machines. Really, there's a tie there. In terms of what you get on the sides, because you can use a Lenovo as a tablet too, they put things like volume controls and the power button on the side, just as a convenience. So that's going to be a difference right there. It's not really a point of merit, dismerit for either machine. It just makes sense for what you're using there. In terms of ports, both of these have two USB 3.0 ports, and they have, you see right there, there's one on this guy, and one over here. Combo audio headphone jacks. Here's our SD card slot on this one. If you turn it around, on this side, this is actually the charging port for the Lenovo, but it can act as another USB port, so theoretically you get a third USB port. Anyway, two more USB ports, one on each, in other words. Mini display port versus micro HDMI. Either way, you're going to need an adapter to attach to an HDMI full-size connector, either a mini DisplayPort to DisplayPort or a mini micro rather HDMI to full-size HDMI, and there's our SD card slot here. So pretty much similar port equipment going on right here. Both of these have metal casings that feel pretty robust. The Lenovo being the skinnier one, some people, I think this is psychological more than anything else, think that this feels twisty. As a machine as a whole, it doesn't. And the display by itself, because the display is pretty thin, yes, you can torsion it and bend it and so on. I mean, it's designed to be flexible and not break, so not the end of the world there. They both have soft touch finishes on the inside. This one is like a rubbery stippled soft touch finish, which is quite nice. You can see it has a backlit keyboard, one stage of backlighting on this guy, large, fairly large trackpad right there. Now, the Dell actually has a carbon fiber interior that is kind of cool and nice feeling. So you're getting a soft touch black pattern finish with either of these guys. I kind of prefer this a little bit more myself. It's aesthetics. It's not really very important. Big glass trackpad here, also Synaptics. Now, some people have had trouble with their trackpad. I have not had any trouble under Windows 8.1 with this. This uses a basic Microsoft driver, which is fewer configuration options. Lenovo will give you more configuration options if you like that. I've found them both to be fairly good by Windows standards. Backlighting here, 2 stages. Both of these have island-style keyboards. Obviously, they're about the same size. By default, the FN row is multimedia control rather than function key buttons on them. And they're both quite good to type on considering how thin they are. Neither of these has room for a whole lot of key travel here. It's pretty much a tie. I give a little edge to the Dell on this one. Lenovo's isn't bad. It's not quite as awesome as their ThinkPad keyboards, though. And in terms of springiness and quietness, it feels a little bit nicer. But you know what? It's really, really close. Both of these would be very pleasant for typists once you get used to the shallower travel of a very skinny Ultrabook. From the side view here, it kind of is crazy, the size difference there, isn't it? Anyway, horsepower. Here's another one where, well, Dell's going to take this one because they waited longer. I'll give them that. The first Broadwell Intel 5th generation series CPU that came out was the Core M Y series, which is like the Y series CPUs from the previous generation Haswell. Those are lower power, lower performance CPUs, really designed for tablets and fanless laptops. Note that the Yoga does have a fan, actually, though, so go figure. Anyway, that was first out of the gate. I think Lenovo just didn't want to wait, so they put the Core M in the Yoga 3 Pro. So unlike the Yoga 2 Pro, you're not getting that full U series, more powerful CPU and more powerful HD graphics inside. Dell, well, obviously they waited for the Intel Broadwell U series CPU to be available with Core i3, i5, and i7 options, whichever is to your liking right there. So yes, there's a noticeable performance difference. If you're just doing everyday home tasks, productivity, you do Word, you do Excel, social networking, web browsing, some casual home video editing and photo editing, the Yoga 3 Pro will do the job for you just fine. If you do more than that, if you need an all-around go-to machine for your business travel, even for your schoolwork, something that's a little bit more horsepower to run, older games, better. Nobody's going to be playing Battlefield 4 on either of these anyway, but you could play Civ 5, for example, or Skyrim on low settings just fine on the Dell XPS 13 2015 model. Really not a great experience on the Yoga 3 Pro. So productivity, lightweight tasks, more all-around Ultrabook in our smaller Dell XPS 15 with full U-series CPUs. Looking at the undersides of these machines now, you can see Dell has a lot of ventilation rows right here. The 2 rubber ridges are raised so to actually make sure that this doesn't get blocked too easily, at least not on a table. If you're resting it on your legs, you'll block some of it, but it's not the end of the world. More modest ventilation holes here. Funny thing is, even though this is the Core M, the lower power, potentially fanless design, I actually hear the fans on the Yoga 3 Pro more often than I do on the XPS 13, and that goes for both the full QHD touch model and the 1080p version. Both of these, you can take the bottom covers off and you'll discover that the RAM is soldered on board. So 8 gigs is the maximum on both of these. Whatever you order, make sure you order what you want when it comes to the Dell, because you can go with 4 or 8 gigs. You can't upgrade it after the fact. Right now, the Lenovo is only available with 8 gigs, so no choice there. You're choosing the sort of the top of the line model by default with it. Both of these have removable SSDs, so you could upgrade those later, and the usual socketed wireless cards. They both have Wi-Fi 802.11 AC and Bluetooth 4.0 with pretty much identical reception. Ours has Broadcom Wi-Fi inside for the Dell models, and it's Dell branded, but it's really Broadcom, and this one has Intel Wi-Fi. Anyway, both perform the same there. In terms of chargers, since I know some of you are concerned about charger size, they're both compact chargers. The Dell has one of those kind of Apple designs where you can take this off and put another 4 feet of cord on it if you want to do that, and you'll get the prong adapter to Higgins for your country on that side. Lenovo charger right here has the pop-out prongs and a removable USB heavy-duty sort of cord, since it uses that USB port kind of charging, a new thing there. I don't think either of these is going to be a hardship. The Lenovo's is thicker, the Dell's is longer. You know, it's up to you. Obviously, if you're using the Dell with the extension wire on it, then it wouldn't be quite as long. Really not a big difference. Now, battery life. Here's another interesting thing. You would think the Core M in the Lenovo would be the Energizer Bunny, right? Because it's got lower wattage usage and all that sort of thing. Don't know what it is. I don't know if it's because fans come on a lot and use some power, but really we manage about 6.5 hours typically, and we've had this around for a while to test it out, since November actually, about 6.5 hours. Dell has some pretty wild claims for the XPS 13. They say 15 hours for the non-touch 1080p version and about 11 hours they claim for the touch version. Now, that's not really exactly realistic, but we have found 10 to 11 hours for the non-touch version. Whoa. And about 8 hours for the touch. So the Dell actually is the one that's going to last you longer on a charge. Lastly, for multimedia, we'll play a YouTube video here of ours, and you can hear the speaker difference. Both of these have the speakers set to 78%. So let's see how they sound. This is Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and today we're going to take another look at Windows 10 because we have a new build here. This is Windows 10 Technical Preview available. Not bad, right? So let's try this one out. This is Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and today we're going to take another look at Windows 10 because we have a new build here. This is Windows 10 Technical Preview available at the end of January 2015. There is not a wild difference, but obviously the Dell XPS 13 is a bit louder. Remarkably loud given the size, in fact. So there you have it. Again, the warmer tones on the Lenovo by default, you can see that my skin tone looks a little bit more rosy and healthy, whereas I'm a little, well, paler over here on the Dell. So there's our comparison, and obviously at the same price point here, well, there's three really important things. The first is, do you want a convertible? If you want a convertible, no matter what, the Yoga is going to win. In terms of horsepower, the Dell is definite winner right there with the full core U CPU versus the M series inside of the Yoga 3. And lastly, there's the size difference. Do you want something that's incredibly small, or are you just happy enough with 13.3 inches and they both weigh about the same, and that's okay, thank you, I don't need to save space in my bag. That's, again, up to you there as to which one you find to be better. Overall, I would say, unless you're really looking for a convertible, the XPS 13 really, with its near bezel-less gorgeous display, incredibly small size, and better battery life and performance, is the winner. So that's the Dell XPS 13, small enough to fit on your shoulder. I don't know if you'd ever do that. And the Lenovo Yoga 3 Pro. Obviously, it comes down to, first and foremost, do you want something that Yoga's that does this right here, or do you need a conventional laptop? Beyond that, there's processor speed and your size and weight preferences. I'm Lisa from Mobile Tech Review. Be sure to read and watch our written and video reviews of both of these products, and hit that like button. This is Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and it's SmackDown time. You guys asked for it, you're going to get it. This is the Microsoft Surface Pro 3. This is the new Lenovo Yoga 3 Pro. Threes in both names, both can operate as tablets, laptops, more or less, each of them. We're going to compare them now. You know those intelligence tests where it says which of these things are or are not alike? Well, these both are alike and not alike at the same time. They both run Windows 8.1. They're both some of the coolest Windows 8.1 convertibles running full-blown Windows 64-bit that you can get. They both can act as laptops and tablets, but here's where the difference comes in. This is the Surface Pro 3. Primarily a tablet first by design. Keyboard sold separately. Literally does separate right there. It's got a magnetic connector on there. The keyboard is going to set you back about $130 for the type cover, which is the one that has the movie clicky keys like this. Has a neat two-part magnet right there, so it improves the angle. You know, you can watch our review of this to get all the information up, but you see what I mean. And that makes it more bearable as a laptop than ever before. So it's not just a tablet anymore. In fact, though this keyboard might be small at 12.1 inches, it's actually pretty usable. However, it doesn't exactly compete with the Yoga 13-inch keyboard experience right here, because Lenovo does a great job with keyboards. And there's our keyboard. Because of the design, it's always there. It's on the bottom. But it's bigger, it's roomier, it feels more like a real keyboard. Both of these have backlit keys. This is not my favorite Lenovo keyboard because this thing is so crazy thin that, you know, you can't have that much key travel there. But it's pretty darn good. More of a normal laptop experience. The Yoga 3 Pro is still more of your everyday laptop first, whereas the Surface is a tablet first. It really depends on which you want more. This being 13.3 inches, also you get a bigger screen, no kidding there. They're both running at very high resolutions. Really, 1080p would be fine on these screen sizes. They both exceed that by quite a bit. So you're talking about extreme sharpness on each, very good color saturation. In fact, the gamut represented by each of these is equal. The Yoga 3 Pro is 300 nits of brightness versus 340 for the Surface Pro 3, so it gets a little bit brighter. But one nice thing about that is you get a bigger desktop too when you're using legacy programs. Of course, you're going to have to use scaling, so we have this set to 200% scaling just to manage the DPI on it, but it's still pretty usable. So it also depends on what size display you want. Our Surface Pro 3 has a 12.1-inch display. So for those of you who are used to larger laptops, it might seem a little cramped. It's way better than the Surface Pro 2 with its 10-inch class display here. I find it just fine, and Microsoft does a good job with this, with optimizing it. It's pretty sharp. It's pretty nice. It's not too bad, but still, 13.3 inch for a lot of people is the smallest they want to go, so keep it in mind. Where the Surface Pro 3 fights back is with its digital pen. And that's what's in our little keyboard holder right here. N-Trig technology, active pen. That means palm rejection. It means a very precise tip. You can use a capacitive stylus with the Yoga Pro 3. Not the same experience. If you've used those on an iPad or an Android tablet, you know, big fat tips, imprecise, there's no palm rejection. It's kind of a miserable experience, especially on a bigger screen where it's just about impossible to not rest your hand on the screen. So for those of you who want the pen for art or for note-taking, the Surface Pro 3 makes more sense. Also, its smaller size starts to make more sense because it's easier to handle. It's nominally lighter, 1.76 pounds for the tablet alone, but once you add in the keyboard, you bring the weight up closer to our Yoga 3 Pro, which weighs 2.6 pounds. It went on a big diet from the Yoga 2 Pro thanks to smaller battery inside and a more power-frugal CPU, also very skinny. So either way, you're looking at actually a surprisingly slim product. The Yoga 3 Pro being also a conventional laptop, thanks to a 360-degree hinge. There it is. You can do that. You can put it in presentation mode. You can put it in tent mode. If you're looking for something that also works primarily as a laptop with those kind of ergonomics, then you've got it right here. Another benefit is the ports. See, there's room for more ports here. So like many Ultrabooks, we've got USB port right there, 3.0 headphone jack. Those are our volume controls, power controls. And on this side right here, USB port. This 3.0 port. This one here is a combo port. This one can be used for charging, or it can be a USB 2.0 port. So 3 USB ports total, micro HDMI, and a full-size SD card slot. The card does stick out of the slot about halfway, but still, that's, you know, similar to a lot of other Ultrabooks, and it's quite a feat for something this skinny and light. Surface Pro 3, on the other hand, is port constrained, like a lot of tablet-first devices. Volume control, headphone jack, power up there, magnetic charging connector, one USB 3.0 port, and a mini display port. So if you're a USB happy kind of person, then you're probably going to need either use the dock with this guy or just get yourself a USB hub. There is a micro SD card slot under the Clever stand as well, right inside of there. So that's how this one is kind of versatile. It has the infinite position kickstand, so you can prop this up in a variety of positions. Obviously, there's no point to yogaing with this because there is no connected keyboard on it. Now, in terms of portability size-wise, obviously the Surface Pro 3 is going to have the smaller footprint. If you need to fit it into smaller bags, those really teeny hotel safes, that sort of thing, this guy can go just about anywhere with you. It may be thin and light, but it's still got the footprint of your standard Ultrabook. Now, in terms of performance, here's where you're going to be surprised that the Surface Pro 3 actually pulls ahead. This has your Haswell Intel 4th generation, Intel Core i3, i5, and i7 CPU options. The mainstream model, the first one that was available, was the Intel Core i5 clocked at 1.9 gigahertz with 4 gigs of RAM and 128 gig SSD drive. Both of these have dual band Wi-Fi, 802.11, AC, and Bluetooth, by the way. Now, the Lenovo is a different character right here. To get it so thin, and because Lenovo wanted to be one of the first with the 5th generation Intel Broadwell CPUs, this has a Broadwell Y series CPU, which is sort of like the Y series CPUs used in some tablets that got less horsepower than the Surface Pro 3. Good news about Broadwell is it actually gets a lot of performance out of that Y series CPU, and it uses less battery power, so they can put a smaller battery. But this still benchmarks a little bit under our Core i5 Surface Pro 3. So for those of you who need the most CPU oomph, you're still going to get out of Surface Pro 3. Surface Pro 3 has more CPU options too, with that Core i3, i5, i7. Obviously, you can go up to 512 gig SSD. The Lenovo right now comes with the one Broadwell Y series CPU option, only the 5Y70, clocked at 1.1 gigahertz, but with Turbo Boost at 2.7. So in Turbo Boost, it can put out some oomph. All models have 8 gigs of RAM soldered on board on this guy. Now, you can open this up. There are screws on the bottom. There's not a lot to upgrade on this, but you can actually take out the wireless card, and that's pretty typical of all Ultrabooks. And it has an M2 SSD drive. It's one of those gumstick shaped ones. So should you ever want to upgrade the SSD in the future yourself, you can. Surface Pro 3 is about impossible to open. I open up everything. This is not something you want to open up, get involved in things like trying to suction cup the display off. So buy what you need when it comes to this one. And if upgradability is important, while the Yoga 3 Pro is not wildly impressive in terms of upgradability, at least you can open up and get to some things. Not so with this. You're going to send this in for service if you need to do that. Now, in terms of pricing, because this Surface Pro 3 is available in different configurations of those CPUs, the i3 starts at $799, and that's with a paltry 64 gig SSD. Not really enough for Windows 8.1. The Core i5, the mainstream one with the 4 gigs of RAM and 128 gig SSD, is $999. But don't forget to factor in the $130 keyboard I'm sure most of you are going to want with this. And then the i7 depends on what size SSD you get with this. You can go up to an i5 with a 256 gig SSD for $1299, which happens to be the same price as the 256 gig Lenovo. And if you want to go up to the 512 with this one and an i7, you can go to almost $2,000 with the Surface Pro 3. For Best Buy price is $1,500. You can get still the same Intel Broadwell CPU, but you can go up to 512 gig SSD for $1,500. The list price is higher, but that's about what it's going for. This guy with the Core i5 and 512, you get around the same price, a little bit more, if Microsoft were to offer the 512 with the i5. So anyway, you're looking, in terms of storage capacity, they would be about the same price at $1299 if you wanted the 256 gig. However, this one's a bit more versatile in offering more configurations and therefore more price options too. So if you're on a tight budget, the $1299 for the Yoga 3 Pro entry-level price might be a little tight for you, but you can get the $999 Surface Pro 3 and still get a very solid spec machine. Now, between two very similar, say, Ultrabook kind of models, we could declare a winner here. Honestly, in this case, the design and the use cases are so different, there is not a clear winner. Do you want a tablet first? Do you want something that's really small, very portable? Adding the keyboard on doesn't really increase the size much at all. We got the magnetic keyboard right there. It just goes right on. Very easy, very light. Or do you want something that has more of true laptop ergonomics? That would be your